Hello students. Now we're going to continue the spice trade, continue our reading on chapter 2, the fight for control. Portugal controlled the spice route to the east. Other countries had been looking for their own routes to the spice suppliers. An Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus, many of you are familiar with him, believed that it was possible to reach India by sailing to the west. Spain agreed to pay for Columbus's voyage. I'm going to pause it and give you a chance to go ahead and take notes and write your key details. Okay, moving on here in the second paragraph here. Columbus set sail from Spain. On October 12, 1492, he reached the Bahamas in the Caribbean. That's going more west, students. If you look at this right here, this is going west. We're west over here. Columbus, he thought that he had arrived in India. Well, Columbus returned to Spain without any spices, but he had discovered lands new to the Europeans. So you look right here, in this part right here, you could see this is his voyage. And this red tracker right here tells you he went from Spain down around by Africa and then directly across through to the Bahamas, which are directly below. If anyone remembers that state, it's Florida. And down here we have South America. So Christopher Columbus called the island where he landed San Salvador. San Salvador. I will pause it so you can go ahead and take your notes. Columbus brought back stories of new exotic lands. These stories made Spain even more eager to explore the world and expand its kingdom. Portugal was the dominant ocean explorer, but that position was under threat. In 1494, Spain and Portugal signed a treaty to avoid arguing over territories. I will pause it to give you an opportunity to take notes. The Treaty of Tordesillas created an imaginary line through the Atlantic Ocean. All lands discovered to the east, which would be this way because it's opposite of the west, all lands discovered to the east of that line would belong to Portugal. Lands discovered to the west of the line would belong to Spain. And that was a treaty they agreed upon. I will pause it to give you an opportunity to take your. In 1522, the Spanish finally found another route to the Spice Lands. In that year, its explorers circumnavigated the world. 3 years after setting out, Juan Sebastian del Cano arrived back in Spain with 1 ton of spices. The Spanish king awarded del Cano an ornate coat of arms. And so here is what appears to be the imaginary line. Here are the Spanish spheres and here's the Portuguese. The Treaty of Tordesillas divided newly discovered lands between Spain and Portugal. Wow. And we think about all these other countries here. And they just took it upon themselves to put a treaty together to take over here. An imaginary line, which means, think about that, students, imaginary line. For much of the 16th century, Spain and Portugal fought for control of the spice trade. Meanwhile, the Netherlands was also trying to break into the trade of these valuable natural resources. And in 1602, the Netherlands formed the Dutch East India Company, DEIC. This right here, students, is called an acronym. And you cannot use an acronym until you've identified what that means prior to it. In this case, it means Dutch East India Company. So with thousands of ships and a huge workforce, the DEIC was the largest spice trader for more than 100 years. I will pause this and allow you to take some notes. Then around 1770, a Frenchman named Pierre Poivret stole some clove seedlings. He planted them in the French island colonies of Seychelles and Reunion, and in Zanzibar off the east coast of Africa. And so here is Africa, Zanzibar, Seychelles. Here is a broader view. This right here is Europe, United States here, down here is South America. So it's a lower part of Africa. They call these the new spice plantations, right down in this area. New spice plantations. Now looking at this picture here, at its peak, the Dutch East Indian Company had 50,000 workers. 50,000 workers. And take a look at that. It's very, very, very large company. And that is a lot of workers. I wonder what their working conditions were like. So moving on, when the cloves that grew there became widely available, the Dutch monopoly was broken. Soon, spices were being grown in large quantities all around the world. New ships were built to sail the new trade routes. I will pause it so that you can take your notes. Now, just doubling back here, students, many of you see this familiar word here, monopoly. I want you to think about that and what that means as it pertains to this particular paragraph. So moving on to this here, these ships were sleeker and safer than those of older times, and they had larger holds. Captains replenished their supplies and returned home faster than ever before. Competition increased and spice prices tumbled. Spices were once a luxury beyond the reach of most people, even in their wildest dreams. These days, spices are a commodity that can be found in any supermarket. Now, I want you to think about this. Think about these words here, which can be considered vocabulary words. They have the bold. Think about this caption here and this caption here. And go ahead and take your notes. Okay, students, I wanted to share something with you. I found interesting in this part of the passage here where it says, then around 1770, Frenchman named Pierre Poivret stole some clove seedlings. He planted them in the French island colonies of Seychelles and Reunion, and in Zanzibar off the eastern coast. So he planted them right down through here in this area. So I wanted to show you what cloves look like. They look like that. If any of you have ever seen any, they smell really good. They're like a seed, as I mentioned, clove seedlings. He planted them in the French islands. So he planted these in the French islands. So that's where these originated. When the cloves that grew there became widely available in this area, the Dutch monopoly was broken. I wish that you could smell what the scent that these give off. So maybe you might check or ask your parents if they have this particular spice in their cabinet, in their kitchen cabinet, and then you can smell it. It's very, very strong. In my opinion, it's the aroma is very pleasant. So you could share with them who stole some of this clove seedling and took it where. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to finish taking your notes, and then look for your comprehension questions. And what I need you to find, I need you to do is just questions will be similar. You're going to be identifying some vocabulary in here. You're also going to be looking for context clues. I'm going to ask you to identify how the author is presenting the information, the text. Again, as we learned in chapter 1, we learned what the essential question was in the introduction as well, but in chapter 1, the importance of spices and how spice trade is a huge part of commodities. And then the first example they gave you from chapter 1 was when the introduction was based on current events, and they explained to you much of everyday food items such as pepper and how available it is here. Another interesting spice was salt, and salt was traded and given to us for silk by China. But that's another story. So right now we are talking about spices, and I'm going to be giving you your comprehension questions, and all of that information will be available to you within these readings, as well as the videos that I shared with you on the comprehension strategy and skills. Thank you, students. So I would like you to reread and listen again to chapter 2. Thank you.